What a great intro, man. That'll get you fired up.
Well, I think I screwed it up because it still said preview. It didn't say live. So for anybody watching, this is our first live show. So I might have screwed our intro up.
Don't worry, you can hear it kind of at the end.
You can hear it kind of at the end. Yeah, I can replay it. Should we replay it?
Yeah, play it.
All right, let's do it.
When you watch the mainstream media news, do you feel a little twitch? Is there a tingle in your left hand? Is your jaw locked? We have the solution. Welcome to Reasonable Arguments, News and Nonsense, the podcast where thoughtful debate meets unfiltered fun. Coming to you from Sarasota, Florida, where your host, Jamie Miller, a political expert with a high-level take on today's events, and Jennifer Bash, someone who can't stand politics, but loves helping you make sense of the chaos. Together, we mix informed conservative commentary, playful banter, and just the right amount of nonsense to keep it entertaining. From domestic and international news to conspiracies both proven and debunked, we tackle it all with humor and honesty. We believe keep your arguments reasonable and your nonsense fun. This is Reasonable Arguments, News and Nonsense. And now your hosts, husband and wife duo, Jamie and Jennifer.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Right. So I'm hoping that we are live somewhere. I'm looking at YouTube and it's not saying that we're live. Well,
I was looking at my Facebook post that is tied to YouTube, and it didn't look like it was live. It said waiting on reasonable arguments. So it might just be buffering. So I say we just go for it. And then the worst case scenario is we tape it and put it out for people.
Okay.
Don't you think?
I don't know. I hate to do that.
We're learning on the fly.
I know we are learning on the fly.
I'm assuming that if people are wanting to join and they, have not, that they'll let us know.
It says I'm live on Facebook.
Okay.
I see that. Yeah. Okay. So we're talking on Facebook.
All right. Well, let's just go for it.
So
we'll figure that out as it goes along, right?
All right. So for tonight's show, so normally we do an audio podcast, and tonight we figured the last time we did a live broadcast was election night, and we did a 4-hour live one that was interesting. And probably the only reason why we don't do a video podcast is because I have to get ready and do my hair and do all that crap. And of course, I don't like to do that. So especially an ugly Sunday when I just want to relax. But we are always unfiltered and unedited. We do podcasts on Wednesdays and Sundays. And so if you're seeing us tonight, please go to YouTube, and our channel is Reasonable Arguments, and subscribe. It costs you nothing, but it means everything in the world to us. So tonight we're going to be talking about private property rights, some California fires that have been happening, illegal predatory fundraising, which sounds interesting, FEMA prediction or conspiracy, and then we'll have the fun part of the show where we have some wild news stories and some crazy people out there.
Yeah, I mean, and several other conspiracy theories after that, right? So,
right.
We're the governor of California is the gift that keeps on giving. The gift that keeps on giving, and he said last week that private property owners in California who are affected by the fires and lost their houses can't sell their property. And he said, well, they can't sell to speculators. But if you look at the executive order, he basically put a freeze on them selling their property to other individuals because they assume that anyone who's buying it is a speculator. And Jennifer, I went on Zillow and found some of these properties. And because I looked up some people in news reports and looked up their properties. And so on Zillow with the house on the property is worth 3.1 million with an ocean view, not on the Pacific Coast Highway, but with an ocean view, $3.1 million with the house. These folks are being offered $3.3 million just for the property, how it sits with a burned house.
Wow.
So these are not predatory investors. These are folks who want to invest. They want to go build a $2 or $3 million home on it and hopefully sell it for 8 or 10. But that's what investment is, and so then you have to ask yourself, what is Governor Newsom planning to do? Like, if you literally are at the whim of their government. So they basically have stripped these folks of their constitutional rights to private property, because if you have constitutional rights to private property, you're allowed to buy and sell it and own.
And this goes to the whole conspiracy that, were these fires done on purpose to clear the land for, the high-speed railway thing that they want to put in?
Well, then the LA mayor kind of almost in a contradictory tone said, well, we're going to try to fast track the building of all these houses if you build exactly the footprint that you had before, which goes against everything they've been complaining about in California about affordable housing. Why wouldn't they allow people who have enough property and are under today's zoning laws? Forget about the footprint. Why can't they build a house that hits today's zoning laws, that would allow for accessory dwelling units, that would allow, kind of the waiter down the street to rent above your garage if you can build that under today's zoning laws? And there's plenty of those cities that would allow that type of accessory dwelling unit to be built, but they didn't have the ability to do it. Now she's saying that not only can you do that, so they're both talking out of both sides of their mouth and kind of talking in extremes. One says you can't build anything. The other one says, well, you can't build what you want on your own private property. And so, it's California government gone wild, really. I mean, it's...
Well, they're saying anyway, I mean, you hear the stories where...
Wildfire. It's government gone wildfire.
Good. That's cute.
Did you like that one?
Yeah, that's cute. But I mean, you've heard the stories from people where they say that, to even get a permit to rebuild, like the one story I heard that we talked about on the last podcast was the woman said that it took her a year to get a permit just to clean up her pool. So the last time there was a fire, they came through, and, you think about animals that are trying to escape and everything like that are, in her pool. It took a year to get a permit to clean that pool out. So just think about, how long it would take to get a permit to
because they just don't let you take the dirt and do anything with it, right? Like you have to do something with the dirt. And so the issue there is, or they claim, is that you have to get a permit, because they then will make you test that dirt. They may even make you incinerate it to make sure that any bacteria is burned out of it. Like, there's crazy rules out there. You can't just go dig a hole in your backyard and dump the dirt from your pool or the ashes from your pool in the hole in the backyard.
Well, I mean, they do that here in Sarasota too after a hurricane. Because the dirt's dirty and the sand's dirty, and you can't just throw it back in the water.
Right. No, you have to make sure. But I think California has the higher level. I mean, in Sarasota, or in Florida, they want to make sure you take glass, steel, refrigerators, grills, grill grates, that sort of stuff out of the sand before you can put it back in on the beach. That's a whole different story. That's a public safety issue versus just trying to clean out your pool, right? And what do you do with the sand? And so, so I think we're talking a little bit apples and oranges, but I take your point for sure. And then, so Gavin Newsom, not only he's had a bad week. He's had a really bad week. So not only has he done that,
well, you set your state on fire. I mean, things are bound to be bad.
Yeah, you didn't take care of we have a lot more acres that can burn in Florida than California, and we don't have near the wildfires because we manage our forest properly.
Yeah.
And so they've just mismanaged out there because of all these rules. I mean, they don't take care of the brush under their power lines because of a mouse. They are protecting a mouse. That's why they have
What?
these wildfires. They like
They're
this.
protecting a mouse.
Yeah, you can't go in and have controlled burns because it may hurt a mouse. Yeah, that's the animal that they're protecting by
That's
not.
in writing somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it'll make your head hurt. So not only has Gavin Newsom failed his state with these wildfires and the recovery, he has now gone through. He's being accused of illegal predatory fundraising that should, I think, be investigated by the Trump administration. This is important because he told Californians and all of Americans, hey, if you want to help people and give to this nonprofit. And so the nonprofit has raised about $550,000, but the management platform isn't Visa or MasterCard or anything, or a nonprofit platform. It's a platform called Act Blue. And for those of you out there who don't know what Act Blue is a Democrat company that raises money for Democrat candidates and causes, including Governor Newsom's own political committee and campaign. And so now there's speculation, and people are running rampant in California suggesting that some of this money is going directly to Governor Newsom's political campaign. There's not been any proof of that yet, but what there is proof of is that Act Blue charges 4% management fee. So if you give a donation to the fund that Governor Newsom is promoting, right now they've raised $550,000. $22,000 of that has gone to a management company that's sole purpose is to promote Democrat candidates and causes, including Gavin Newsom. So he basically is paying his own consultants to raise money and it's for a firefighter charity. And so he's certainly using his government office to raise money for his consultants to help pay them off. And it's just, he needs to be investigated. And if Californians, they have a recall provision in their constitution. He probably should be recalled over that issue alone, if not the fires.
Well, what honestly happens, when Trump takes office tomorrow and if he fires Newsom, which, he's come out and said that he's already asked for his resignation, what happens with that?
Well, a president can't fire a governor. He can't ask him. He can ask him.
He asked for his resignation,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. And that happened. The question is, you almost have to be careful what you wish for, because who's the lieutenant governor who's going to step in? Is that going to be worse than Newsom? And I hate to tell you, but Kamala Harris is now looking for a job. It'd be pretty easy for that lieutenant governor then to appoint Kamala Harris lieutenant governor. And we're just perpetuating a problem that will exist for us 8 or 10 years from now when she decides to run for president again, if not in 4 years when she decides to run for president again. So I would put that in the category of be careful what you wish for. But, the Gavin Newsom certainly has been a failure to his state, and he should be investigated for this predatory practice. And which then leads me to, you asked what President Trump can do. And what he can do, and I think you will see happen, and this falls under the Jamie Miller predictions or conspiracy category. So we have sound effects. Ladies, and she surprised me with that one. So good job, babe. That was right on cue.
Right? Isn't that great?
Yeah, that was good. So it falls under predictions or conspiracy. And so what I predict will happen is that Donald Trump will tell Gavin Newsom that the state of California is getting $0 for fire recovery, and that all the money will go to cities and counties. Now, if you remember, historically, what happens is the federal government gives money for recovery to states, and the states decide how they're going to give the money to their local entities, their cities and counties, to recover. Mm-hmm. And last year, Joe Biden, being the political monster he has been over the last 4 years, told North Carolina and Florida that we are not going to give you the money. We're going to give the money to the counties that were impacted. So I certainly think Donald Trump is going to take a page out of that book and tell Gavin Newsom to go pound sand. You're not going to get $5 billion to for California recovery, for you to have a slush fund and to run around the state and hand out money. The money is going to go directly to cities and counties and to the people who are directly impacted by these disastrous fires. So,
well, that's how it should be. I mean, and what's their policy for each person, filling out for FEMA? What are they going to actually get?
So here's the conspiracy part of it. Number one, I don't know, but they should get what all of us deserve when we're facing these disasters. We should stand with our fellow Americans. But I do think that Donald Trump will throw another layer in there, and that layer will be, hey, California, hey, city, hey, county, if you want this money, you're going to participate in deporting illegals who have broken the law. And so I think, now I've not heard this from anyone else, so you're hearing it first here, the night before Donald Trump's inauguration. But I think that that's a smart move, and I think Donald Trump will make it, that he will look at the state of California, the cities and counties within the state, and say, you're either going to work with the federal government deporting these criminals, and California has a bunch of them, and who've trafficked children, drugs, weapons, all sorts of stuff across our border into Southern California, and you're going to help us find these criminals, and we're going to deport them. Or guess what? You're not going to get you're not going to get federal money for relief for your firefighters. You're either going to help the federal government do this other thing, or you're not a partner. And so I think that you'll see cities and counties participate in the deportation plan, and people can say, look back on this and call it either a prediction or conspiracy, depending on whether that comes true or not.
I wonder, we haven't really heard anything about any kind of loitering or anybody being out in the fires.
That's not true. There's plenty of loitering.
Has it? I could imagine. I mean, you take a metal detector out there and imagine the jewelry or whatever you would find in those ruins.
There's plenty of that. People are fighting to get back into their communities to protect what property they can, and the government's trying to keep them out. And of course, criminals are going in there and doing exactly what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
And taking things out of the rubble that are worth value, gold, diamonds, things like that. The other conspiracy, I was on a great podcast Friday night called Fired Up that originates out of Southern California.
Oh boy!
And they think,
was it named that because of the fires?
No, it's Reveling Media, but the host is all fired up about politics. That's why it's called Fired Up. Oh, and wow. So William Del Pilar, and super dynamic podcast host. I think he's going to do great. And we'll actually have a little bit of a announcement, I think, in this upcoming week about Reasonable Arguments kind of teaming up with Rumblings Media on some things. But it's not done yet. We have some other announcements, that we may get into, including we might have our first advertiser, but that's a little premature as well. And so we have, when I was on that podcast, of course, the rumors and conspiracies are running thick out there, but they're living it, right? And so they do believe that there are going to be zoning changes before people can rebuild. They do think that many of these single-family homes, people will only be allowed to join with their neighbors to have land and build apartments instead of rebuilding their single-family homes.
Oh my God!
Because of the affordable housing crisis in Southern California. And so they think, there's a lot going on, but there's also a lot of federal influence that Donald Trump can have over all of these issues, with or without Gavin Newsom. So, we'll see.
It's terrible. I mean, these people, what do you do? I mean, I can't even imagine losing everything that you own and then not being able to at least go back somewhat to some kind of normalcy if you can rebuild.
Well, it's kind of funny in Florida. I don't want to. We out on Siesta Key, for instance, a lot of houses were flooded, the amount of time and effort it takes to get a permit to go in, put new drywall, by the time you do that, you might have
Yeah.
mildew in Florida. So a lot of homeowners took, their own, left to their own devices, and they're like, listen, I'm going to follow the code. So if they ever want to come inspect it, I'll be within the code, but I'm going to get this water out of my house. I'm going to get this wet drywall out of my house. I'm going to get this wet insulation out of my house. And for the most part, I think the county has worked with those homeowners to say, okay, if you have something going on, we want to come look at it, but we're not going to stop you from cleaning your house so that you now perpetuate the problem with mildew.
Right.
And California does not seem to have that type of common sense mentality.
Well, we had talked about too that, there's houses here and there that have survived the fires. So then, what happens then? Like, of course, I go straight for the conspiracy where, they're going to be like, oh, okay, well, everything around you's gone. So just sell us your property. And, basically you don't have a choice.
So yeah, the government can come in and have eminent domain, and they can, now, what is required by the Constitution is that people are given fair market value. Well, what's the fair market value of the land without the house on it?
Right.
And so it got a lot cheaper for government to buy it if they wanted to, invoke eminent domain for, let's say, high-speed rail in California, like we spoke about on a previous podcast. Yeah. And, those are, you can argue that, hey, listen, there's an argument to be made that you have this opportunity as a community and as a government to suggest that, hey, we can do things better and right this time. And that would include some accessory dwelling units. It would include more apartments instead of single family homes. It would include, what any number of high-speed rail, any number of great things, more parks, more baseball fields, more schools, all the things that we all like in our community.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is this is private property owned by U.S. citizens, and they have the right to do with their property with what they want. And so, I don't think it's wrong for the government to say, hey, we, in this perfect society, we have this chance to rebuild. We face this with Hurricane Charlie down in Charlotte County, south of us in Punta Gorda, where the eye of Charlie came ashore. There was it was a cute little mobile home park where, somebody owned the land, and, mostly as a 55 plus community, the seniors owned the mobile homes, and then they paid land rent. And, they had waterfront living for pretty cheap, because most of those mobile homes you can buy for $10,000 or $15,000 and own them. Mm-hmm. And you pay your land rent, whatever that was per month. And you lived in this waterfront community. And Charlie came through and took all the mobile homes away and blew them down or destroyed every single one of them. And before anybody could rebuild, the Charlotte County Commission and the Punta Gorda City Commission changed their zoning laws to say you can no longer have mobile homes on the water. Mm-hmm. And so, you go to Punta Gorda now, it's a cute little downtown on the water. It's a beautiful spot. But, these things happen where government steps in and says, okay, there's been a disaster. We're not going to allow another one to happen. And they'll do it under public safety, like they did in Punta Gorda, that, hey, we can't have mobile homes in the water. If we have a 12-foot tidal surge, these things are gone.
Right.
And so, but we're still Americans. We still have property rights. And, in that particular case, I think the landowner worked with government to ensure that his property was valued at its highest and greatest use, which was not a mobile home park.
Okay.
So
let's move on to conspiracies.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going.
No, you have the list. Well, I guess my main conspiracy, and I said this last night, is that, and it's probably being gun shy since we were at the RNC when the assassination attempt happened, and just being extremely concerned with tomorrow, and I'm thrilled that they moved it inside. Of course, you're seeing everything across different platforms where people are like, oh, Trump makes you spend all this money to come out, and all these people spend all this money to go out, and then it's moved inside, and blah blah blah. But I don't care. I mean, this man has had his life attempted to be taken, how many times now?
Twice that we know of.
Twice that we know of, and it is a true threat. And so I know we had the opportunity to go, and we made the decision not to. You made the decision not to because it's too cold. But I honestly was not really wanting to go just because of the safety factor. Had I known that it would have been moved inside and it would have been a completely different environment, it might have been different. But just you're hearing different things happening, and that'll
you
take
still
us
have to walk in all that cold weather.
That's not even the point. That's not the point. But anyway, so I know.
Well, here's an interesting thing. The U.S. Capitol Police Chief was this week at a press conference, said there were two issues with Jimmy Carter lying in state at the U.S. Capitol that were thwarted by Capitol Police. Two lone gunmen. One tried to bring a knife into the Capitol and meant to do ill, and another got as close as they could to the Capitol and put their car on fire to disrupt.
Well, the other one had a knife and a machete, right?
A knife and a machete,
yeah.
Yes. And so, and the other got as close as they could to the Capitol and put their car on fire to disrupt the funeral and Jimmy Carter's lying in state in the Capitol. So these lone wolves are out there for sure, and those are the hardest ones to pick up because there's not chatter, right? So when you have a terrorist cell, for instance, normally there's some level of chatter or money moving around or some type of either movement of weapons or something that
do you think
alert the government.
Do you think that we're getting infiltrated here by Nugget? Do you think that they are saying that it's a lone what do they call them? A lone wolf?
Lone wolf, yeah.
Lone wolf.
Yeah.
But in reality, I'm assuming they caught these people, they have them in custody, and maybe that is why they beefed up security and moved everything inside, because maybe it is part of a bigger regime that nobody knows.
Tomorrow's cold in Washington, D.C. is going to be bitter.
But I think that they have done other inaugurations.
Well, they've also moved plenty of them in.
What was the meme with the guy sitting there with the tassel cap on and the?
We also lost a president 20-something days into his presidency because he caught pneumonia at the inauguration.
Who was that?
Wasn't it at the beginning of McKinley? And so
how long ago was that?
That was 100 years ago, but it still happened.
100 years ago, they didn't. I mean,
so it's 10 presidents ago, 12 presidents ago.
Well, it doesn't matter how many presidents. It's time, and it's whether or not they have means to not die from pneumonia.
So the truth of the matter is, Donald Trump is not a spring chicken, and it is bitter cold. It is deadly cold.
You're seriously sitting there telling me that you believe that they moved this inside because of the cold weather.
100%. Ronald Reagan's went inside. Bill Clinton's went inside. So we've had recent inaugurations go inside. So this is not. It's not necessarily abnormal. It's now those others could have gone inside because of threats as well. And maybe these threats happen way more often than we know.
Right.
And and I do believe that threats happen against government officials way more often than we know. However, it's the right move regardless to move it inside, whether it's a threat on the president, whether it's a threat on the crowd. I think it was probably more likely to be a threat on the crowd than it was the president. And
either or. I mean, after what happened in New Orleans, and
sure, 100%. That's regardless of which one it is, of which one it is, for public safety, it needed to, whether it's the cold, whether it's protection, whether it's whatever, it needed to be moved inside, and it was the right call to do. I know that there's some people who are upset, but we know plenty of people. We've talked to people today who are there, and none of them are upset.
Right.
They're like, hey, now I don't have to go sit in the cold. Like, that's what they're saying. So, so I do find it interesting that the CEO of TikTok is attending. What are your thoughts? You're pro TikTok.
I am, you know what? Everybody is so worried about data and all this crap. And, you can't tell me, I'm the person that believes that anytime you go in and get a shot, they're injecting a little chip into you and it's being read, over the airwaves or whatever. And
I love you so much, baby.
Don't make fun of me. I mean, I truly
I'm
believe that.
I'm not making fun of you.
I truly believe that everybody's so worried about their information getting out there and all of this stuff. Everybody has it. You enter everything into websites every time you sign up for something.
Yeah, it's not about data. You can get the data. If they want the data, they can get it. The difference is, it's about influence, and it's about how they can influence a particular situation quickly through something like a viral videos that they decide to push to the top. They decide to push the message to all their users all the way to the top.
Isn't that what our news media does?
It's sort of like Zuckerberg getting
It's no different.
Yeah, that's not exactly true.
It is true.
It's no different than Zuckerberg pushing his message all the way to the top. Listen, we've talked about this before. We do not allow media companies to be owned by more than 20% of a foreign individual or company. TikTok is, quote, an entertainment app. However, if you're under the age of 40, there's something like 40 or 50% of people get their news from TikTok. And so we should not be getting our news. We should not allow news organization or distribution. Now, the sad part here is I'm going to be consistent about this because I've always been against the federal funding of National Public Radio and PBS and the public broadcasting system. The federal government has no reason to be funding those two agencies, those two media companies. Just like the government should not, like I know that the talk today is Donald Trump wants to own half of TikTok. That's probably the worst idea he's come up with. Like, why are we going to accept the government? Why would we accept our government owning TikTok or the Chinese government owning TikTok?
It's going to be part of the DOGE. That's going to be their job, owning TikTok.
Yeah.
You know how many companies are owned by China in the U.S.?
A lot.
As of 2022, it was approximately 5,000 companies in the U.S. that are owned by China.
Yeah. So it's
and that's going up. That was at the end of 2022.
So the problem is it's a real problem. Land being owned by China, farms being owned by China. It's a real problem. And so, when our government and our politicians are saying the Chinese is a threat to America, allowing them to own this huge number of companies and certainly media companies is something that we should not tolerate. But I don't believe we should tolerate our government owning them either. I've been a longtime advocate of defunding PBS and NPR for these exact same reasons. That they're not media companies. They're not fairly presenting the news. They're presenting a slant of the news, and TikTok is the exact same way. So I'm going to be consistent and say the government shouldn't be involved with any of them. We shouldn't allow Chinese government. We should go through and make them sell it to private American citizens, and then let private American citizens, make the money.
Okay. Was that your rant? Because I'm going to tell you that if it wasn't for TikTok, I would probably not be interested in politics at all. What I see through TikTok and the little bit of snippets here and there, and I enjoy watching that, and it draws me in to want to know more about it. So you should thank TikTok, because if it wasn't for them, we probably would not be doing this podcast.
You mean I could be doing the podcast all by myself?
Which you would be great at, because you love to hear yourself talk. So it would not be a problem.
No, I love doing it with you. It's a lot of fun.
All right. So we got about 10 minutes left.
So the other thing is, and I think you sent this to me on TikTok.
Right.
So,
yeah,
I'm not saying TikTok's not valuable. I just don't think China should own it. I don't think our government should own it. So I'm not against TikTok. I'm against Chinese government
Well,
and
I
our
think
government
everybody
domain.
went over to Red Note.
Whatever, who cares? There's
Yeah.
there's a bazillion things. So Jake Sullivan is the current national security advisor, and he goes to the podium. They all kind of go through this, oh, it's my last day on the job, or it's my last day on the podium. So Friday he stands at the podium and he says, "This is my last time at the podium, unless there is a calamity." Let's see what he said. What he said was an unexpected event. And then he said, which is totally, and I quote, I'm reading it, so which is, quote, totally possible. And so it, like, if you're, like, I can see a brand new I can see Trump's national security advisor on Monday using language like that. That's kind of like, okay, that's a little tone deaf. But somebody who's been in the job knows better than to say, hey, I really am kind of expecting to be in on this podium again before the president of the United States is inaugurated, because there's likely to be something. It's possible. I mean, he might as well have said likely something to happen.
Let's rile the people up. Let's rile the people up and get everybody. Yeah.
And so it's just kind of another tone deaf moment, for this administration. And of course, we've had the president has been tone deaf this entire week, and he doesn't care. I think he knows his legacy is in the toilet, and he just doesn't care. He commuted the sentence of 2,500 people. On Friday, he all of a sudden declared that the Equal Rights Amendment was the law of the land and has become the 28th Amendment, which, of course, the National Archives, which are the holder of the Constitution, and the people who are nonpartisan, who take care of our documents and certify these things, immediately said the ERA did not meet the qualifications to become an amendment, because when Congress passed the ERA in 1972, they gave it they put a time limit on it of 7 years. And a lot of states ratified it, 30 states ratified it in the first 7 years. So Congress went back and said, well, we'll give it another 3 years, make it an even 10. They gave it to 1982. Another 5 states ratified it. But so they got up to 35. But during that time, during that 3-year period, 5 states went and said, you know what, we're taking ourselves out of the ERA. We've looked at it a little closer. And so there's this constitutional question of whether a state is allowed to remove themselves from the ERA, or remove themselves after ratification, before it becomes law, before it becomes an amendment. And there is some precedent after the Civil War, but it had to do with, slavery and things like that, where the Supreme Court said, no, you're not going to back out of that. You got to stick with the amendment even until it becomes an amendment. So, but they certainly, and here's the weird part, is Virginia in 2020 became the 38th state, which means they met that 3/4 of states technically ratified, even though 5 removed. So there's 33 states who currently have, quote, it ratified. So, but this was all happened when Joe Biden took office. Joe Biden could have made this declaration on day 1 of his presidency. He waits until the Friday before his presidency ends to make this declaration.
He's not doing this on his own. I mean, he's not doing it on his own.
No, there's no question. But
and we don't have enough time to go into it. But he's, it's there's a reason for everything that they are doing, and we're gonna figure that out.
So after
tomorrow.
Yeah. So the next question is, what will Biden do in his final hours of president? Will he give preemptive pardons? He already commuted the sentence of 2,500 people. Does he give Liz Cheney and the January 6th committee that illegally impeached the president of the United States twice? Does he pardon all those folks? Does he? And I also, a conspiracy theory that I might have is that, what world event is going to happen that will try to overshadow the inauguration of President Trump? Yeah. I don't know that it may not be domestic. It could be foreign, but it seems like there's something, if you look at the National Security Advisor's comments, there's something brewing that makes you think, or at least kind of believe a conspiracy theory that there's something happening that at the very least is going to try to overshadow. I mean, Biden has done little petty things like, oh, we're going to make the flags fly at half mast over the Capitol in honor of Jimmy Carter instead of celebrating the presidency, a new president, and allowing flags to go full mast. So, there's I mean, Joe Biden is proving, and his entire team is proving to be petty,
that's a
children.
national thing that the flags stay that way for 30 days, right? And so, I mean, I think you can argue both ways for that, because that's Trump wanting all of his pictures to have the flag flying high, and not that. So,
and I think they will, because I think the Speaker of the House has said the Capitol flag is going to fly at full mast. Of course, immediately following the inauguration, the White House flag will go to full mast. A lot of governors have already decided that for tomorrow, flags are going to fly at full mast. So there's certainly a lot of pushback on Joe Biden and suggesting that them trying to. It goes back to 2000. One of the weird things that happened after the 2000 election, as Bill Clinton's team was leaving the White House, they destroyed public property by removing all the W's from the keyboards, which, quite frankly, I thought was a little funny, at the time. But at the same time, they destroyed public property, and at the end of the day, it cost like $3.1 million to replace all the keyboards where they stole the W's so people couldn't type George W. Bush. Oh, and so it's just like, another layer of Democrat pettiness, as they claim they have a peaceful transfer of power, but they continue to do these petty things.
All right. So we have about 2 minutes left. So that means I can only tell one of my funny stories. And
we might be able to go a little longer, babe, if you want.
Okay. So the first story I have is out of Ashtabula, Ohio. And there are 2 women who are facing charges after police say that they drove a dead man to the bank to withdraw money from his account. So these were women that apparently were living with the man just that day. I guess they left, came home, and found him dead. He was 80 years old. So they put him in the car, set him up in the front seat, set him up to make it look like, so when they pulled up to the bank, the teller could see him. And they withdrew the money. And I don't think it says how much they withdrew. But then after they were done, they went and dropped him off at the medical office and left them there and just drove away. But they were actually able to.
They just put him on a park bench with a cigarette, right? Like, what did they do?
No, they actually took him to. Where did they said they dropped him off at I guess one of the women called a medical center and gave some information after they dropped him off. They dropped him off at Ashtabula County Medical Center. Oh. So they are now facing charges of gross abuse of a corpse. And I guess they were arraigned in municipal court.
I wonder what in Ohio is the definition of gross abuse.
Well, I mean, if you take them on a joyride, like Weekend at Bernie's, I guess would have been.
Yeah, but if the bank was on the way, maybe like they could have thrown them in the car and taken them to the medical center themselves to try to save the ambulance fee, right? So
anyway,
I don't know.
My second story is here in good old Florida, where a tech-challenged Florida woman who was actually headed to rehab on New Year's Eve, but then I guess decided that she wanted a last fix and called her drug dealer to buy some fentanyl for about $45. But what happened is when she called PJ, who was in her phone as PJ, that was actually an investigator with the police department. And so she set up the deal with him. So they were very happy to meet her at the local Tom Thumb convenience store in Panama City to get her. So when they were asking her,
she had 2 PJs in her phone. One's a cop and one's a drug dealer.
Yeah. So the cop's name was, this was Miss Octavia Wells. And the cop's name was Stephen Pettyjohn, but I guess she had him in her phone as PJ. So, of course, now the question is, what interaction did they have before that she has this investigator's number in her phone? But then she said that the cop's name, I guess, was very close to what her drug dealer's name was. So she has now been charged with communication, unlawful use of a communication device, possession of drug paraphernalia, and driving under a suspended license. So I guess she was looking to get hooked up, but instead got locked up.
Oh, I see what you did there.
All right, so that is
great show, Jennifer.
the end of my stories. I think we blew it on YouTube, but we will figure that out for next time, and we will definitely upload this video. So whoever was able to see us live, please, again, if you can, go to YouTube and hit subscribe, and we appreciate you.
And we have some music to take us out.
We do have some music to take us out. Bye, Jamie.
Bye.
This has been Reasonable Arguments, News and Nonsense. There is so much BS on the mainstream media news. But you knew that, and that's why you're here. We tackle everything with complete honesty, and we always end on a lighthearted note to leave you smiling. Why do it if it ain't fun? We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on social media. Find Jamie at RepJam and Jennifer at Jennifer_SRQ. See you next time as husband and wife duo Jamie and Jennifer keep it real on Reasonable Arguments, News and Nonsense.